has a never-ending war with you because you are the group that God calls his crown. And so this dream that I had, this dream was extremely concerning to me. Not that it actually directly affects me, but it certainly involves all who will listen. As you listen to this dream and you are a mom, even if you are not of the, just a moment, please. If you are a mom of any ethnicity, any background, and as you listen to this dream and you find that you have been a victim of this, all I can do is say to you that the Father sees your pain. And may you take that pain to him, even if that pain is reawakened by hearing the details of this dream. However, the best example that I can give you is the example that the Lord gave me just before I put the camera on. So I'm always seeking God for the best possible way to present his truth. I'm not bringing content to you. This is not for entertainment purposes only. In all the stuff that you have ever heard me say, you have never heard me say things like allegedly, because when the Holy Spirit speaks, there's no allegedly. It is God's truth. It has to be handled with reverence. It has to be handled with courage. It has to be handled rightly so that the matter, if I'm building the Lord an altar here with these messages, then every stone has to be set rightly. So you go before the Lord when it comes time to present the prophecies, as much as you go before him to have an understanding of the prophecy when you get it. And this one really, really, really was scary to see. And it also reminded me of quite a few things that I brought here. And so I will tie them all together for you. But when I went before the Lord just before bringing this, and I was saying, Lord, how to truly present this dream in a way that people will not start getting upset. Not that I care about your upsetness, please. That is something that you will simply have to work through by yourself or with whoever you talk to or whatever. But I was asking him, Lord, how to present this so that people will not start to say, oh, it's separatist, it's separatist. And God said, simply tell them what any safari guide would tell people. And he was telling me in my heart, Celestial, safari guides know that many animals are endangered, okay? They have many little tiny birds that are endangered, and they say, oh, we only have a few of these little birds left. And then they have, for instance, I think white tigers. White tigers are heavily endangered. And then we have rhinos, for instance, and then people are poaching lions, especially the rarer light colored, the light gold lions, and I think the rare white lions. They're even black lions. So God was saying that they poach lions and they poach the tigers and they poach the tiny little birds and they poach the elephant and the rhino. But the Lord said if you would speak to any safari guide, the safari guide would tell you, oh yes, they poach these animals, but we in our experience know that they poach the rhino and the elephant a lot more. And then he was showing me the horn that is on top of the rhino's nose, as well as the tusks that are at the side of the elephant's face. And he was putting the understanding in my heart and saying, you see, my daughter, all the animals are poached. But when it comes to, for instance, the giraffe, or when it comes to, for instance, the lion, people are poaching these animals simply to be able to have bragging rights. They're poaching these animals so that they can be able to step on their heads with their guns and take a picture and then put the picture up on their social media and then also carry perhaps a trophy like a head or a pelt of the animal home. But then he said, when it comes to the rhino and the elephant, these animals are being poached because of a practical commercial need. See the wisdom of Yah. He said that these animals, like the rhino and the elephant, are being poached because of a particular existing commercial need. People want the tusks of the elephant because the ivory is considered expensive. Just because ivory sales are banned, it has nothing to do with real life. They're still poaching the elephants and they're still having black market sales. And in fact, the ivory is a lot more expensive now that it's banned, because everybody knows that from the poacher to the shipper to the guy who weighs and values it to the courier to the end result getter to the underground ivory sale, everybody knows that they will get in trouble if they're busted. And so that added pizzazz to the whole illegality of the thing makes the price of these banned items go up. When it comes to the rhino horn, there's strong belief all across Asia that rhino horn makes you extremely fertile and performative as a male. And so there's a high demand for the horn of the rhino to the point that rhinos are getting extinct. So you can have a whole plethora of animals that are being hunted. However, there's a difference between the animals that are just hunted for showing off and the animals that are hunted because there is a need for them for what they carry in the market. And then he brought it home and he said, in the same way, there is human trafficking, and they pick up all colors of people. They pick up white people, they pick up Latina, they pick up the Native Americans. Native Americans have a shockingly high rate at which the females, grown women, and the young women go missing. In fact, nobody needs to even say, oh, do you think that it could be an abnormality? It's a huge abnormality at which Native women and Native young girls and youth go missing. And at the same time, there is so little interest in investigating their deaths, even the young males. There's so little interest by the powers that be and by the different hierarchies of governance structures, the sheriffs and all that. They basically don't care about finding these people. They're so quick to close their cases. Otherwise than that, they're so quick to leave their cases open forever and never try to resolve where these people go. They pick up black people, they pick up white people, they pick up Latinas, they pick up people from different nationalities who come across the border here and go missing, or are living here and go missing. However, God was showing me that there is a particular focus on his people, his melanated peoples of all groups that live where? Here in the United States particularly. So if you're Israel and you live somewhere else and you're thinking, oh no, she's not talking to us, that's because you're not in that particular danger. If you're Israel and you live outside the United States and you are not actually in what is called a scattered land, if you're in Jamaica, for instance, who are you in danger of? You're at home with all your Jamaicans. You're at home with all your Haitians. You're at home with all the Guyanese. So what danger are you in one to another? No, when you still are dwelling in the land of the captivity, when it hasn't actually turned into a country that you can name after yourself, and it's primarily you, God has a right, and God as a father will always highlight the particular dangers of living in what that old song calls the strange land. For how shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? And so there is a commercial need for the melanin that is inside the skin of black people. It is a fact. It is a documented fact. Not only that, it's an economic fact. This is a very high in demand, high selling thing. It is very, very high. It is very, very expensive, melanin. It's more expensive than gold. And that is because it has these proven regenerative properties that can make you go back to your youth, that can actively fight diseases that left unchecked can end you. Cancer can end you. But off the so-called proper studies, melanin is known to fight aging. It's known to fight severe and aggressive diseases. It's also known to sort of almost freeze body chemistry in place so that you simply stay young and put together for a long time. Stem cells do the same thing. But when you're getting the stem cells from someone who is a melanin carrier, it's that much more potent. And so God has every right to warn. And this dream was a warning. And I also have one or two other warnings that have come across my way in life. And remember, as far back as January, February, the Lord said, Celestial, I'm opening your mouth, meaning I'm giving you full reign. Tell these people everything and leave nothing out. And one of the reasons God has told me to tell you why, he said to be absolutely candid with you, whether you're afraid of what you hear, whether you mock at it, whether you scoff it, whether you spend all your time walking in unbelief, but comforting yourself and telling yourself that your unbelief is just you being logical or you're being discerning. You're actually walking in unbelief, plain and simple. You just need to go and read Hebrews chapter 3 until you find the place where it says twice, I think it's Hebrews 3 verses 13 to 15. And then it says that also before, that today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart as the fathers did in the rebellion. When you harden your heart, it means you're exalting what you think about what God thinks. You hear what God thinks and you just think, well, I don't think that that's it. I think what it could be immediately. Why are you trying to put the word of God under your foot? So those who do that, it doesn't matter what your response is. God is putting the information forth because one of his reasons is that he said that you will accuse him of nothing. When the time comes, when all is said and done, when everything has been performed and we all stand before the Father in judgment to give an account of the things that we have done, I will account for the fact that, Celestial, did you say everything? And I will say, absolutely, Lord. Here's when that video and that video, not that I need to recount it. He will have all the receipts. He will have everything. And then he will begin to question because he knows the eyes and the ears of every person who comes here. He will say, well, you heard everything and you watched everything. And what did you think? Did you account the whole work as true from me, or did you despise the whole work and cast it off as an evil work, or whatever it is that each person would say? So this dream is an important warning. It's going to contain aspects of the supernatural melded into aspects of reality, and I ask the Lord's grace to bring it forth. It is called The Bull Doctor, June 25th, 2024. So I had this dream, and this dream is about shape shifters. There are many shape shifters living among us now. I know that a lot of people may find that hard to believe because your daily experience of life is that you know that this earth contains plants, you know that this earth contains people, you know that this earth contains animals, and that may be all you know. If you have a traditional church background, indeed, that will be all you know, even though a good traditional church background should include knowledge of Satan, knowledge of what Luke 10 and 19 calls all the works of the devil, as well as knowledge of the demonic realm. A well-rounded out church education should contain God, should contain the fact that there are angels, which right there, it's the supernatural, should contain the fact that we have this earth and all things that God has created on the earth, but we also have the evil supernatural realm in which is Satan, is the fallen angels, and is an entire host that have different names, marine kingdom, and then there's the prince of the power of the air. So that means that there are powers of the air operating without bodies. These are spirit without bodies. God calls them ancient evil without a body. And then we have tangible creatures that have been created through Satan's little evil workshop that we will call the Nephilim. And then we have that entire separate class that are known to us as aliens. And so there are so many different aspects that the average church education has never oriented God's people to. And that is part of why in this blog, God does not hold back telling us about these things. Why? In the days of Noah, these things existed. And Jesus is the one who said that as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be again. That's a simple statement to say, go back to Noah's day. Everything that you can peg there. If there was a sky in Noah's day, there will be a sky in the end times. If there were people in Noah's day, there will be people in the end times. It says eating and drinking. We have that now. It says marrying and giving away in marriage. We have that now. But what else was there in Noah's day? There were strange oddities walking among the people. They were known to the people. It had actually reached a time of clashing because the strange oddities possessed far more power than human beings. And so at the end of Genesis 5, you will see it says, and then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. But if you actually see in the book of Enoch, it expands upon that and it tells you that men were not just calling upon the name of the Lord, which pastors make it seem as if it is only at the end of Genesis 5 that people started prayer, which is what we call calling upon the name of the Lord. They were not calling upon the name of the Lord. They were actually screaming out to God for help and deliverance. By the time you come to the end of the genealogies in Genesis 5, and it says, at that time, men began to call upon the name of the Lord. That was not the first time that we had prayer. That was just the point at which it became unbearable. The creatures that were living in the midst of man. They were persecuting people. They ruled people. They were actually most of the ancient kings that sat upon the thrones. They demanded so much hard work and so much tribute out of people that it got to the point where they had consumed all the goods of the land, all the products, and especially all the food. And it got to the point where they began to eat people. And that is when people began to call out to God in anguish. And then the good angels actually went to beseech God and say, my Father, for you sit upon the throne and your eyes see everything. How long will you tolerate what Azazel and the bunch have done? Shape shifters are those who are able to maintain a human shape and be what they are at the same time. They can be a human shape and they can be what they are at the same time. They employ something that I will simply call a cloaking. The same way that alien ships are able to be there one moment, they can simply come into visibility, and then the next moment, they're gone. You don't actually see them taking off. They don't disappear and fly away where you can say, it took off at such speed. Sometimes you hear eyewitnesses say that. No, a ship can suddenly materialize in what was an empty space, and then they can disappear in that same space. Your eyes are watching them. And God has revealed here on this blog that that is them playing interdimensionally. There are dimensions on this earth whereby the ship will simply blip out of this dimension that we live in, where we can see, we can touch, we can smell, we can feel, and things like that, okay? And then it goes back into a dimension where the limited senses that we have are not able to perceive it. What am I saying? I think there's a dream I did on the 5-year anniversary of the written blog. And I had a dream in which the ship was there and then the ship was simply not there. And the ship had been sitting there all along. It just wasn't visible to the people. When it brought itself into the dimension, it wasn't seen flying in. It was simply there in front of all of us in that neighborhood. And the ship had the ability to wake all of us from our beds and call us. We all came as by some unseen signal to this one place. Shape shifters exist in the here and now. They live here. They're married to people. I have covered all these things back in the early years of the blog. I think 2021, this was more than a 6-year period. So a shape shifter is a real thing that can look like a man or a woman. It is not a clone. It is not grown from human cells. It is not grown from saliva or a scrape of blood or anything like that. And then in time, you can nurture it into a person. It's not a clone. It is not an android. It is a supernatural being. And I do not know by what witchery, okay, they can look like people. They can look like anybody you know. They can look like ordinary people, or they can just change the outside. I think there's a hero like that, superhero. Her name is Mystique. Mystique in the X-Men can become anybody, okay? She can just glitch and have that horrible changing skin that she has, and then she can even be a man standing there. It's a female thing. It's a female Nephilim, but she can turn into any man, any doctor, any police officer. And her evil trickery is so much used to the side that she's on with the X-Men, because she can simply go around fooling people by saying, oh no, I'm your mom. I've come to pick you up. Imagine a Nephilim picking you up at the airport because you agreed with your mom that you're coming. And then they simply hack your email, and then they know. And then that thing comes and picks you up, but it's not your mother. So this is what I saw. God was showing me how many of these things are in the medical profession and what they are doing there, especially in relation to true Israel. So please listen. I dreamt about shape shifters. I saw myself in a place that looks exactly like a hospital, and I was talking to a man that I knew from before. Now, in real life, I don't know this person. I don't know any doctors personally like that, at least not here in New York. But I found myself in a hospital, and in the dream, I knew this person. This person was my doctor. And so I came for an appointment with my doctor, but I didn't know why I was there for this particular appointment. And so this man then asked me, so what can I do for you? And what are you here for? And in this first dream, I didn't know what I was there for. So I came and I was talking to the man, and hello, doctor, how are you? And he was saying, oh, how are you? It's good to see you. How have you been and everything? And then he said, so what can I do for you today? Even if you have your primary care doctor, your doctor that you've been seeing for years, if you book an appointment and you come in to see him, he may not know what you're there for, because maybe you're having a particular problem and you book the appointment so you can tell him about it. But when this man asked me, okay, Celestial, what can I do for you today? I didn't know. I had no idea why I was there. And so I went a little blank. And at that point in the dream, I could not answer. But then the scene changed again, and instead there was another woman sitting there. The woman was dressed exactly like I had been dressed. The woman looked exactly like I had been looking, same clothes, same everything. But I realized now, looking at the woman, that it was this woman that God put me in her shoes. So God had made me her for a brief moment, but with my same brain, I have no idea what I'm doing there, because I don't actually know this man, but he's convivial with me. He's talking to me and I'm talking back. But my actual own brain was thinking, I don't know this man. What am I here for? And so when God put me out of the woman's body and now I was standing right there in the room with them, and I was observing this checkup or this check-in, whatever you could call it. So I think that God was showing me just how easily it can be me or anybody else in this situation. In fact, I venture to say that many, 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 many thousands of us have been in the presence of a shapeshifter, have in the presence of a Nephilim, have been in the presence of an unclean and undead, and been utterly unaware of it, simply because we will not know by looking, because of their ability to put on a human front, a human self. I will explain more about that later from a dream I already gave, but many new people are here, and you may not have reached that point of that dream yet. So God was showing me just how easily it can be me or anyone else who puts themselves in this position or finds themselves in this position. It is without question overwhelmingly us as people who puts ourselves in the majority of situations that harm us and that bring us so much pain and anguish to our lives, simply because we are not sensitive when we are in danger. Okay, many of us are not sensitive to when situations are dangerous for us. But then God was also showing me that even when I try to warn my people, even when I try to give them pings, even when I try to give them what we now call red flags, he was saying that people utterly brush these off. They ignore it. They push past what is known as the holy restraint of the spirit. And that is how he says 99% of the time, the pains that impact human lives and cause tragedy come from his people blocking him out so that they can carry on with only the pathetic tiny covering of what they see and what they think about a situation. And so I saw this woman now. She's same clothes that I had been wearing, same skin, same hair color, everything, talking to this man. But she was very easy with the man because she knew him. And they were sitting in the very same office that I had just been in, under a very, very bright ceiling light. One of the big round lights that you find in the interrogation room, in, when the police and the FBI are interrogating you, they have that big harsh light overhead. And this place did not so much look as a hospital. It didn't so much look like a hospital office of a doctor as it did the kind of room where they question suspects. And so I was thinking about that, and they had the same conversation. They greeted each other, small talk. And then the doctor said, "So what are you doing here anyway?" But the woman this time said, I'm here to have a baby. I'm due today, and I know that it's now time for my delivery. So we've come in, we've checked in, and I'm here to have my baby." And she said, "I'm scared, but I'm very excited at the same time, and I can't wait to meet my baby." And the man said, "Oh, that's great. I'm going to be your doctor for the procedure. So let's go and get you ready." And it was at this point that I think the whole situation just scattered, because under that bright light in what did not look like a proper examination room or anything like that, this man, God revealed to me that this man was not a human being. Not at all. Not even remotely in the same population tree, okay, or species tree of human being was this 100% appearing doctor, part of what is known as humanity. This man was in fact half bull and half man. And the way that my eyes popped with terror when he first started glitching was no small thing. And this is because this man was already a big man. Minimum poundage, 210 pounds. But it was not any kind of fat. He was one of those men with a big body, just a big appearing body that works out and is very, very strong. One of those men that have a big chest, big neck, big arms and legs. He had a bushy beard and he had a large head fitting on his body with those, those humpish things up here. I think they called lat muscles that the men have when they really work out. This man was big. He had been appearing the same size in the first dream, but now his bulk just seemed very menacing. And in this second dream, under the lights of his office, this man started glitching so bad between a human shape, a normal human shape, and a massive bull shape that was so much bigger than even his human shape that I wanted to swallow my own throat inwards seeing that creature. So he would glitch, man, and he would be this very bulky, these CrossFit men, you've got to do it. And then he would glitch, and then the real him would be bigger than this man standing there. The bull shape was so huge with a blackish gray matte coat. So, you know how cows are when the owners really love them, or horses, owners that take the time and they have only one cow and the cow is not there for meat or milk. It's there to be a friend. Okay. People sometimes have rescue cows and things like that. They will brush that animal until the coat gleams and it has what is called a short nap. That's how this bull thing had a short gray black matte nap. And it was like Satan. If you've ever seen some of these more scary pictures or depiction of Satan, how they just show him so massive and bulky, this man had those same ram's horns that Satan has coming off of his forehead, the big, heavy Satan type of curling horns and wicked, wicked eyes. It is very strange, human beings. We don't really recognize sometimes evil or malice in the expressions of people. And that is because most people who are wicked and evil are able to mask almost 90% who they are, what they think, and what they really are. But eyes give away a lot. And there is a type of wickedness that we can be capable of as normal human beings when we're wicked. But the wickedness of the Nephilim is beyond this. This is because inside Nephilim is missing the important component of a soul. Nephilim have no soul because the soul is actually the living breath that God put into Adam, and God will never put the soul into a Nephilim. He will never cause his spirit to dwell in these soulless beings. And so this is why I always warn when I'm speaking of otherworldly creatures, when I'm speaking of Nephilim, when I'm speaking of the wickedness of Satan, then just as I'm getting going, human beings will come and say, well, do you think that they want to repent? Do you think God will ever forgive them? Do you think this and think that? And they ask a lot of things that I never think because I know my Father. If I know that my Father put his soul, his breath that is the human soul, nefesh, into us, then it will never come into my Christian mind to ask myself if God will ever accept something that he never ever made a connection with in the first place. Because I know God and because I have a Bible readily available to me, I don't think such things. I never actually spend time on Netflix watching the stuff that people watch. You see this thing that is called the little baby that was born with the reindeer horns. I can't remember what the name of that Netflix series was, but when I was covering hybrids, everybody Sweet Tooth. Amazing how many Christians have watched that. So people will watch Sweet Tooth, and then you will allow this country to put a program in front of you that does what? What does it do? It softens you up to Nephilim. Because it will show you the Nephilim in its baby form. And then it will show you all the Nephilim went through. All the discrimination that the poor Nephilim creature went through. And then you start thinking about the discrimination in your life. And then you know what? You find a point of connection with Satan. That is primarily TV's job, to help you find a point of connection with Satan. It wants to help you find reasonable doubt that makes you think, well, is Satan so bad? Hasn't Satan actually had a lot of the same experiences as me? I've been rejected. My family treated me like this. Look at the murdering Nephilim. Everywhere he went, they didn't want him in foster care or whatever. Satan's job, actually, is just to soften you up enough until you end up in hell. He doesn't need to win over everything we think. He doesn't need to harden us so much that we actually become Satanists. No, Satan is very successful in dropping just enough ink into the clean water of the Christian well until you go from pure sparkling water to dim or darkish blue. That's enough to get you cut out of God's standard for righteousness and holiness, which is to believe God about everything. You can never be said to be righteous when you have questions about, are the hybrids taken care of? Are the hybrids going to be forgiven? But then what if they didn't know that they are hybrids? Celestial, do they know that they are hybrids? Is there room for them to be born again? Can we witness to them? Once your mind is like that, that mind is 2 steps away from the reprobate mind. And I'm not going to engage with that mind because the reprobate mind is catching. The reprobate mind is like a very virulent type of flu. It moves from person to person. All you need is 1 or 2 questions with a reprobate mind to open the doorway into you to start thinking the way the reprobate mind does. So I never engage with people who come and ask me things that are anti-God, because that tells me that a Bible is available to you for under $25, but you don't want to read it. You want to do what if questions, but I can't afford to catch that kind of flu because I want to see Jesus at the end of my life. So that is just why there is a separation between people who have the mind of Christ and people who are either entertaining the reprobate mind, they're on their way there, or they're already reprobate, but they're walking around with jobs, families, and they think they're going to heaven. They're absolutely not. So there's a wickedness that Nephilim have that is heinous, and that is because Nephilim are not capable of any type of emotion, such as kindness, such as mercy, such as love, compassion, understanding. They have no capacity for that, because those are gifts that God's personality in the soul is capable of. And so the wickedness with which this thing was watching this lady terrified me. It terrified me to see this woman in front of something that was so much bigger than her in the natural, but then so many times bigger than her in the spiritual, and she had absolutely no perception to it. So when it was in the bull shape, I could see that it was just watching her with this. You know, the way that a cobra would look at a rat in its cage for a little bit before it struck? That's how this thing was watching the lady. But whenever it glitched back into the man shape, it had a very concerned expression. It had a lot of soft care in the face. It was nodding a lot, and it was taking copious notes as the woman was answering questions that it was asking her. How was she feeling? Was her body feeling any particular type of way? Just before we go into this delivery, do you have any concerns that you want to make me aware of? The man was taking so much time with this African American woman, but the bull was simply sitting there with the pen and the pad in its hooves, and it wasn't writing down anything. So it was, if you can say that the light would go flicker, flicker, and then it would be the bull, and I would see it sitting there with the pen and the pad, and then flicker, and then it would go back to being the man, but it was not flickering for the woman. It was always the man. But me watching there, it was flickering, and I could see the 2 different sides. That bull wasn't writing down anything. It was looking at that woman with so much hate, a very patient hatred that literally made my heart sink for this lady, because I was standing right there in that office with them, and I couldn't do anything. I could do nothing for that woman. I was not even able to speak in that moment, because I knew that even though I was standing right there watching the interaction, I was not real in that interaction. So to warn the lady, so I could only look on in dismay as she was revealing all her innermost fears and all her personal information to a creature that was deadly, but that was able to look like a man. First dream, I'm sitting there and I don't even know why I'm there, and I'm being asked all these questions, but I'm not really able to answer, and that part doesn't last long. Second dream, it is another woman there, and I see an interaction going on between what can never be of God and something that God made. And this woman is in danger because she's handing over personal information, but about to surrender her body into the care of what I can see hates her with a visceral hatred. And then the dream changed again, and we were in the operating room. The bull had now changed into green scrubs, the robes of a surgeon, and there were 2 nurses on call, both human beings, who prepped the lady for her delivery. I was so sick for this woman, and this time God didn't have me in there with them. God put me just behind some kind of plate glass observation window, but I was looking right at the surgery, and also the Lord had zoomed in my view, almost like I could see myself standing there. So I could see Celestial standing behind the glass, but then Celestial standing behind the glass, the Lord now zoomed in my view to see exactly what was happening at a very, very close range. The woman was covered with a sheet from the waist down, with her feet in the stirrups, so that the view of her female nakedness was visible only to that doctor. The nurses were up at the head of the woman, comforting her and rubbing ice chips around her mouth and just telling her mama it would be okay. So the 3 human women had no view of what that bull was doing on the other side. And this woman, because she could no longer see her doctor, could not see the doctor, then choosing to mostly maintain that bull shape. She couldn't see it because she was in pain, and the nurses were also focused on the woman. So this creature became so bold to start staying longer in creature shape instead of in doctor shape, but I could see it. And then this creature took this bull, the bull doctor, took a very big pair of iron forceps. Now, I know that sometimes forceps are necessary when you have a difficult birth. It can help be used to gently turn the baby, but the use of forceps in delivery of newborns, even though it is a long-standing practice, it is becoming more and more controversial because wrong use of forceps can cause damage on the skull, the cranium of a young one. It can also cause damage on his neck, her neck, and things like that. The forceps that this bull took were not even the kind that people are writing peer-reviewed articles and saying, the jury is out. No, it was the massive ones that the grill master uses when they're working in Iron Man chef things. I mean, big, huge iron gripping tongs. That is what this creature picked up. Something far bigger than any hospital is allowed to have. And he went with it a few times like it was a grill weapon for burgers. And then he said, all right, let's get this show on the road and see if we can't help this little guy get here in one piece, shall we? But the smile that this bull was wearing, the smile this thing was wearing, and how he was flexing those forceps, I'm telling you, I felt sick, and I knew that this man was going to crush that baby during the delivery. I just knew it. I had the knowing, and I could see it inside him, the intention that he had. He was planning during the birth. When it gets to the moment where there's just too much action, okay, because this woman wasn't accompanied by a man. Sometimes if you're there with a man, at least he will keep an eye on the doctor or something. But this woman was by herself. She was in the care of the hospital, and she was in the care of a changeling, a shape shifter, something that was and was not at the same time. And the 2 human nurses there were focused on caring for this woman, helping her, encouraging her through. So their care was on the woman because they're expecting that the licensed medical professional in the room will take care of the actual modalities of the birth. So the man was planning, this creature was planning that at a moment when the action was toughest, maybe when they're almost there and they're saying just a few more and the woman is bearing down and she's in pain, everybody's like, keep going. He was planning at that moment to clench those tongs on that baby's head hard enough. He wasn't going to crush the head because you know what? That's easy to see. Excessive force will be easy to see. They'll write it up. There'll be a whole investigation, a hospital investigation, criminal investigation. It's too obvious. He was going to squeeze that little male baby until he caused something in the baby's head. God was showing me that the baby is going to have something in the head burst, and then the blood will just flow through the brain tissue, exactly as if you were pouring Kool-Aid through all the ruffles of a cabbage leaf. That's how it was looking. He was going to rupture something important in that baby's head with the amount of pressure that he was going to put on the baby's head when he was claiming to guide it out. And I even saw what he was going to say afterwards. He was going to say, it was a difficult delivery. I'm so sorry. I did the best I could. but sometimes we don't always win. That's what the man being was going to tell that woman. It was a difficult delivery. I'm so sorry. I did the best I could, but sometimes we don't always win. I saw it. I knew it ahead of time. I saw it inside him, and I cried out to the Lord, "Oh no, Lord, this is how much they hate us. For they are even here among us trying to kill us and reduce our number from the womb." This is the dream that I had today, June the 25th, 2024. And now I will go to the scriptures. I usually read them at the beginning, but on videos, you'll find all the places to get in touch with this blog. And I have been saying here for the last 6 years that despite the strong American resistance to surrendering to the headship of God, something that has been lost in this nation, the absolute understanding, because it has been poorly taught, but also because the heart of the populace of this country is extremely hardened through repetitive operation of sin, through the dumbing down of the population by having sin in every corner, everything that God hates, everything that is actually precluded by the Bible. People are so used to it in America that the sin of America has proliferated itself, meaning that it's spread up like mold, like rash, like lichen up the bark of a tree, and it has spilled over into all the nations of the world. And this is why this is Mystery Babylon. And Mystery Babylon is going to be completely destroyed, as is written in the book of Revelation, chapter 18. So if you are any type of Christian, whether you are a lukewarm Christian, whether you are a medium warm Christian, whether you are a red hot Christian, whether you're not a Christian at all and you've just come across this video, God is telling you that as long as you are, number one, an American, or number two, from anywhere else, and you're living in the United States, there are going to be, from the time that I've been speaking since I started in May 2019 up until now and going into the future, there are going to be such powerful changes in what makes America. There's going to be such powerful shifts in what forces will drive and control America in the future, that the people who belong to America are going to become absolutely subjugated to powers. This is physical, natural powers. This includes a physical, natural power, such as will be unleashed against this country from the elements. I'm talking about the sun. I'm talking about the rain. I'm talking about natural disasters, such as earthquakes, such as floods. We will see tsunamis in the future on both the east and the west coast. We're going to see almost kind of glacial activity. The winters in America are going to become harrowing as we go into the future. Same for the summers. The temperatures that God will unleash against this country will become so dangerous that people will be prone to external skin diseases, because the sun is going to be burning and disfiguring people, as part of what you can actually read in the book of Revelation, as how the sun scorched people, and as the sun was scorching people, people were cursing God. So America is definitely included in many of the end times judgments that you can find in the book of Revelation, because the most obstinate people in the world live here. And that is not a statement that I need to qualify. That is not a statement that I need to say in case you're upset about it or in case you're angry. Here are the reasons. These are statements that come directly from God's heart to the American people. God says that the people in America are the most hardened people towards righteousness and goodness, and the most open-hearted people towards sin, meaning that every single type of thing that God hates will be able to find a comfortable home here in America. And not only will sin be able to find a home here in America, but sin will always have an advocate in an American, meaning that as long as you can point to something and say that is a sin, there will be a huge crowd standing up to defend that sin. As soon as God raises up a voice to identify sin, people will say, why are you identifying the sin? Why are you pointing to that sin? Why are you exposing it? Why are you naming it by its name? Who told you that that's even a sin? Do you know how many people do that? Do you know how many people are doing just that? Who told you that's a sin? That's a lifestyle. So that is what happens here. Not only are the people always willing to find a space to welcome sin in, But sin will always have a group of people, usually millions, in the way that they think and practice their daily life, who will stand up for egregious sins such as homosexuality, such as fornication, such as adultery, such as having loose lifestyles that are prone to drinking, smoking, taking of substances. People will take substances in this country and then say that they need it to relax, they need it to de-stress, and things like that. And I just want to let you know something that God was putting on my heart today when I was having a little bit of exercise, is that people who continue to take these things that you puff on, the colored nicotine, e-cigarettes, the vape stick, whatever that is, you're going to get cancer in your mouth. You're going to get cancerous sores in your mouth and in your throat. And God says a lot of you that you will not make it, because he says that these sticks, you use it and you tell yourself in your heart, here is the excuse that he was putting in my heart, as if I'm a person that has ever touched these things. The excuse that was coming up in my heart when the Lord was just laying it on me about what this punishment will be, is that people use these sticks and they continuously justify to themselves that it's not as bad as nicotine, because that is what is marketed to them by these people who are giving you just something that is not even an alternative to nicotine. It's just a nicotine with different skin. It's just nicotine in a different font. But then they tell you it's less addictive based on who knows what type of research that they've obviously paid the FDA to funnel through and pass it and say, yes, it's legit. If you are an American, I'm just speaking here by the Spirit of the Lord, according to whatever is flowing through my spirit, because Yah has been saying so many things that even though I was able to capture some of it down, which is the prophecy for today, I didn't capture all of it. So as it comes through, I'm just going to give it to you live, and it's just going to be live prophecy plus whatever I just got written down in the last 40 minutes or so, because people will justify the thing that they are doing. And God is actually saying, and has been saying to me today, that we have come to the end of the road for the justification of sin, since people are now at the point where they are complacent in sin, and they also have a little linchpin in the ticking time bomb of having sin in their life, and they just have their finger in that grenade pin, like, oh, but it's less addictive than nicotine and stuff like that. God is actually telling me that not only will you get cancerous sores in your mouth, but that thing you refuse to pull the trigger on, and I'm talking about just e-cigarettes. I'm not even talking about the more dangerous portal things like weed, like alcohol. I'm just talking about e-cigarettes. Puff, puff, and then the little smoke comes out. God says that there's going to be the payment and the penalty of madness for smoking those things. Those little cartridges that you put in them, pink and blue and raspberry flavored and stuff like that, you are going to go over to the other side. A lot of you have been watching this evil program that you should not be watching, called Stranger Things. And Stranger Things is the show, if you see the trailer of it, that actually depicts what I've been talking about here for a long time, that there is another side. If you watch one of my old prophecies from, I think it's 2021, it's called A People of Madness. There's a People of Madness Part 1 and a People of Madness Part 2. And in a People of Madness Part 2, I was talking about how there's going to be mass departure from the mind of many Americans. And that affliction of madness is going to come against this country as part of God's judgment for a people who truly intellectualize the existence of sin. What is sin? Is sin really sin? And even if it's sin, is my sin sin? Let me send Celestial a mail and tell her about a situation that I can easily read in the Bible and see that it's sinful, but I just want to hear someone who looks like an authority figure tell me that, yes, if you're doing the same thing that's in the Bible, then you also fall under the category of sin. So because people intellectualize the existence of sin, and then also They are very complacent in warring against sin to get sin out. The Lord was simply highlighting this one issue of e-cigarettes and saying that you are literally going to put that thing in your mouth and take a puff of cherry flavored smoke like you always do. And the next thing is you will find yourself in that Stranger Things dimension. You're going to find yourself there. You're not going to be able to come back. You're going to be stuck in that dimension where demons, devils, creatures, and unshapable darkness. There's darkness that actually is alive. It's not like the darkness that happens outside when the sun goes down and the moon comes up. There is a darkness that can take amorphous forms. It can form itself and it will be right there in front of you. And you will lose your mind. And you will get stuck in that other so-called other dimension that movie calls the upside down. Personally, I have no name for it, but I have been constantly talking about a realm where you will be conscious on that side, screaming and screaming and screaming because of the things that you will see. But on this side, as soon as you start that screaming from over there, I said that they will medicate you. And you will be sitting in a little cotton gown and rocking, and your family will be coming to see you and thinking, I think he's getting better. I think he can hear us. There'll be nothing like that, all for the sake of puffing, because it may seem like, oh, what an extreme judgment, what an extreme punishment for just puffing on an e-cigarette. But actually, the greater understanding of what you have done is that you have continued to drag garbage into the temple of the Lord, which the body is. You have refused to take the trash out. You have refused to take the garbage out. You have refused to remain celibate because you want to have sex, because you think that you're the only person on earth that God is going to give a pass to. And so eventually, for the continual pulling of large sacks of trash into the temple, God is simply going to shut the door on revolving in and out of sin. And just for that simple addiction, which the world will constantly justify. You bring this up now in the midst of people who vape, and they will fight you all day. And the reason they will fight you all day, I've already explained as I'm speaking, is because there is no desire to cut off sin in the hearts of the majority of people in this country. Whenever the conversation of sin arises, the average American immediately becomes sensitized on the devil's side to say, how do you know all this? How do you know that the things that you're saying is true? We shouldn't judge. Right now, the perfect example for that is that a man is on trial, and every single day of his trial, worse information about the monstrosity that he secretly was comes out. But people just keep saying, I'm not one to judge any man. I'm not one to judge any man. Only God can really judge this man. And yet, as God is in the process of using man's own systems to judge this person, people continue to say that there has to be a wide gap left for even a reprobate to come back. But that's not the way God does things. There is no room for reprobates to come back. That is why God is very clear in the book of Romans 1 that when you enter into the arena reserved for the reprobates, he will give you over to the reprobate mind. And that mind is always on a one-way pipeline to hell. The reason that people think that there also is forgiveness and grace and room for the reprobate to come back is because people refuse to read God's word and acknowledge that God also has a cut-off point. God warns about his cut-off point. He says that grace does not abound, so sin can abound. But people read that and think, oh, he doesn't mean that, because people always think that God is the one more chance God, but he's not. So that is just one thing I have to say. God has been speaking to me about war.